Today we're looking at the final verse that we considered yesterday from a slightly different perspective as we try to seek out wisdom to the manner of how we can determine exactly what the truth is, what truth with a capital T is. In verse 21 of Ecclesiastes chapter 3, it said, "Who knows if the spirit of man rises upward, and if the spirit of the animal goes down to the earth?" Who knows? That word knowledge is the thing that we're looking at. How can you be absolutely certain that what you believe is the truth? That's where a subdivision of philosophy called Epistemology, forgive me for using the large word there, comes in. Epistemology considers how we can know truth. The mind of God perfectly knows reality, perfectly knows truth and meaning. Truth is the property of judgment, therefore, which corresponds and coincides with the mind of God. When we fail to see reality from God's perspective, we're blind and we're lost, because God's knowledge is infallible. Truth must correspond with the mind of God. The question, therefore, is always, how do we discern God's mind? Well, there are several proofs that allow us to ascertain truth. The base level, the most basic way that allows us to understand what is true and what is false is instinct. At the lowest level, there is instinct. Instinctively, humans believe in the supernatural and in life after death. Further, the impulse to worship is common to all mankind. And also, mankind shares in an awareness of guilt. And so there is these instinctual things that hint at what is going on, hint at the truth. There's something behind all of that. So that's the first level. Then there is a thing called social custom. That is the commonly accepted beliefs and practices which carry authority within a community. And then there's the next level. There's what's called the consensus gentium. This is the notion that if the majority hold a certain position or belief, then it must be the truth. Understand, these are rising levels of our perception of what is truth or what is reality. We haven't reached the place where we have got absolute knowledge of truth and reality, but we're finding levels upon which we can build a framework or have as our foundations, or why we believe what we believe. These are all involved in why people believe what they believe. Haven't you heard? Well, everybody believes that, so it must be true. Or perhaps you've heard things like, well, the government says that, so they wouldn't be saying lies, or the doctor said that, or, and we just take a person's position or authority, or the pastor says that, and we take their position or authority as being the truth. This is common for us all to operate in this way. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that these are factors within what helps us to understand what truth is. Then there comes feelings. Feelings. The inward conviction. Intuition. People say, I just felt to do this. It's a strange phrase. What a strange phrase. You often hear that in religious circles, in church. People say, I just felt to do this. Or I have a feeling that. It's so common that we all recognize that it carries a voice of personal authority, of a compulsion to do something. A religious experience is part of the genius of Christianity. Without feelings, Christianity would be sterile. But feelings and intuition can also be misleading. Therefore, we need more criteria for testing truth. However, I fully believe that an experience will overcome an argument any day. That's why our particular church has an experience. My background is in the Pentecostal church, and it's quite experiential. Not experimental, but experiential. Because an experience will overcome an argument. Every day I know all the arguments, but I've had an experience with God. And then there comes pragmatism. The only truly North American philosophy that has ever come about is pragmatism. It asserts the test that truth is found in its practical consequences. So you know this. People say, if it works, then it must be true. How do you know if it's true? Well, see if it works. However, as finite creatures, we don't understand ultimate consequences, whether they're constructive or destructive. Therefore, this can only be a limited test of truth. Pardon me, excuse me. Then comes empiricism. Empiricism is sensory perception. That which can be proven by our senses, what you can see and hear and taste and touch and smell. So this is the scientific position, the objective position, the materialist position, where if you can see it and you can touch it, then that verifies that it must be the truth. We're not arguing with that. There are some that argue with that. There are some, the solipsists, who believe that nothing actually exists, nothing at all. I don't know what they're arguing about, because they don't believe that anything exists. But most of us of a rational mind accept that what is going on in the world around us is a reality. It may not be all that there is, though. And many times what we see is not what is actually there. Yes, just go into a witness stand and give your testimony, and then have another witness follow you giving something completely different, a different picture of what took place, and you'll wonder, were you even there? Empiricism is also a limited test of truth. It can never provide ultimate truth. And then there's a thing called phenomenology. It's a phenomenon. So what phenomenology is all about is the idea that it's not just what you see, but it's what you interpret what you see. It's the experience of what you see that is the truth. And then there's a thing called utilitarianism. Utilitarianism says that if it serves the greater good of humanity, then it must be the truth. You've heard these arguments in various manner all around the world. During our pandemic, we were hearing this utilitarian argument continually. That you should have the vaccination because, well, we want to serve the greater good. We want to keep everybody safe, and so you should have the vaccination. And so this is a common thing wherein people perceive truth and reality through the greater good that is served. And then there is consistency. So truth can't be self-contradictory. So there has to be a consistency between what you believe and what is the reality that is happening around us, and it has to be consistently true. For example, your experience cannot contradict with the Word of God. It's just a simple example. Because if the Word of God expresses the mind of God, then how can your experience contradict with that? And then there is narrative. The stories of God's people provide a narrative whereby truth is revealed. And there's a thing in theology called Heilgeschichte. It's a German word, but it's talking about salvation history, where we look upon the history of how God has dealt with his people throughout time, and by that we understand truth. And then there's a thing called coherence, where several layers of truth coincide like a helix, and in that the mind of God can be more accurately ascertained. Then there comes revelation. So there's two categories of revelation. One is natural revelation or creation, where Romans, Paul says, for the invisible things of God are clearly seen, being perceived by the things that are made, so that men are without excuse. So we can see in creation the natural revelation of God, and then there is special revelation. Special revelation can be broken down into four categories. At least I break it down into four categories. So the Word of God is the infallible source of truth. And then Jesus is the ultimate source of truth. It says in Hebrews, for in many past occasions and in diverse manners God spoke to our fathers through the prophets, but in these last days he has spoken through his Son. And then there's miracles and healings and signs and wonders. So it only takes one person to be healed to prove that God heals. And then finally there's encounter. So you can have an encounter with God. There are people all over the world at the moment. There are Muslims all over the world at the moment who are having an encounter with Jesus, and Jesus is appearing to them in dreams and in visions. So it is special revelation that provides us with many infallible proofs. In other words, if you have special revelation, the Word of God, Jesus, etc. If you have special revelation, then you have infallible proof of what is truth. And all of the others are prone towards distortion because they're coming to us through our perception of what is taking place in the world around us. So since God is by nature self-consistent, together the proofs correspond to the mind of God and provide an accurate guide to the knowledge of truth and reality. The more proofs that you can accumulate, the greater your confidence in any truth claim. But not all proofs apply to all situations. So the verse in Ecclesiastes that we're looking at is a point, for example. He says, who knows? Who knows if the spirit of man goes upward and the spirit of an animal goes downward? Well, you can't find that out by scientific proof, because science doesn't concern itself with that kind of thing, nor does pragmatism or utilitarianism or any of those other isms. You have to go to special revelation to find out what happens. And so that tells us that God has spoken to us about this kind of way. We can know truth concerning that, but we can only know it through what he has given to us through his word, that has revealed the answer to us. And the spirit nature must always rise toward heaven. And I'll tell you why. Because that is where it originated. Dust returns to dust, and the spirit returns to God from whence it came. Think about it. If truth corresponds with the mind of God, then every lie must correspond with the father of lies, or the devil. There's an old nursery rhyme that I still enjoy to this day that goes, I once knew a lady who swallowed a fly. I don't know why she swallowed a fly. Perhaps she'll die. I once knew a lady who swallowed a spider that wriggled and jiggled and tickled inside her. I don't know, and she swallowed a spider to swallow the fly, and I don't know why she swallowed the fly. Perhaps she'll die. And she keeps on swallowing various animals, a bird to swallow the spider, and then a cat to swallow the bird, and a dog to swallow the cat, and eventually ends up with swallowing a cow, and then a horse. And of course, she died in the end from swallowing all of those huge animals. But the point of the story is this: be careful what you swallow in the beginning, because in the end, it will have grave consequences. You want to ensure that everything that you believe is the truth and nothing but the truth. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow for some more wisdom from this amazing book of Ecclesiastes.